What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about different texture errors, specifically the new Zoroark EX card from Battle Partners that has a pretty special texture error, and we're going to be talking about that in detail. I'm not sure how many of you guys follow the Japanese releases, but the set Battle Partners was just released in Japan a few weeks ago, and the card that really piqued my interest from the set was the Gold N Zoroark EX. And the reason that I was really kind of excited about this card is because it has a really cool error, as well as a cool artwork. But the error is that some copies actually have the incorrect texture on them. They actually have the texture from the Speecial Illustration Rare, or the Speecial Illustration Rare version of the card. And the thing that's a little strange is that normally when we see texture errors like that, we'll see texture errors on a bunch of different cards from the set. So what I'm thinking is that this error was actually a design error rather than what we normally see as like a print error, because they just had the texture loaded in incorrectly in the design, which, believe it or not, the texture is actually all part of the print process, and we'll get a little bit more on that later. But the crazy thing about this texture error is the price, because right now people are selling these cards for like $1,200 or more, which for texture errors, that's pretty much the craziest that I've ever seen. And I collect texture errors, so it's pretty wild. Right now, I think that price is a bit inflated. I think that people have been hyping it up a bit on social media and stuff like that, and maybe that's why the price is so crazy. So if you want to pick up a copy for yourself, I would tell you, my best advice would be just to wait it out, because there's a good chance that you will be able to find a copy later on down the road, and the prices are gonna stabilize a little bit. They're gonna even out. My guess is that you could get it for $300 or less, so I wouldn't buy it until then. But that's just my advice. I just collect texture errors, so I kind of see the values, and even 300 is high, but from where it started, I'd say that's a good dropping point. So now that we talked about that, we can get into a little bit more about some texture errors. So here, these are from Shiny Treasures. This is also another Japanese set. So if we take a look here, we can see the texture is actually shifted on these cards. This is a Kilowattrel, I believe. I'm not that good with new Pokemon names, but this one has a really nice shift. Here we have another one. This one is a Dolive. Again, really nice texture shift kind of to the left there. And my all-time favorite, we have this, I think it's a Hisuian Tauros maybe? I'm not exactly sure the area it's from, but it is a Tauros for sure. And he is the most shifted out of all of them. And the cool thing is right here, we see there's actually no texture where it's supposed to be in between the cards, so there shouldn't be any texture there. So that's just how shifted this really is. So I'll give you a little insight about texture shifts and why they're even possible. So even though it is a texture and it looks 3D, and it almost might feel 3D sometimes, all a texture is on these cards is actually it's a print layer, basically. It is clear ink that is layered, and then they print over top of it most of the time, and that's how you get that textured kind of look to it. Honestly, it works the same way as a holographic shift works. So in a holographic shift, all it is the white layer is shifted down. And in this, all it is the texture layer of ink has been shifted. Believe it or not, you can find this on any card that has a texture, but certain cards are a little more, it happens a lot more often in certain sets than others, that's for sure. In the case of this Scizor EX card, there's actually no texture. In this card, you are supposed to have a texture on it. Obviously, this is a full art from X and Y Breakpoint, and there is actually no texture at all. And that's the same reason. It's because that all it is a print layer, and they just accidentally left off that print layer, or it was completely obstructed during print, which my guess is that they just left it off for this one because there's no sign of texture over the card. Here's actually another example of no texture, but this is on an EX card. This one is obviously Toxicroak. This is from, looks like from just maybe Scarlet and Violet base set, I'm thinking. But this one actually got a 10, so that's pretty cool. But on the flip side of that, we've actually seen a lot of cards like this one. This kind of error happened a lot in X and Y, and if you look really close, there is some texture left on the card. So on the actual card itself, there's not much texture, but when we look down here, there's some texture on this corner here and on this bottom edge of the card. And for some reason, we see that quite often in X and Y sets. I'm not exactly sure why that most of the texture would be missing rather than all of it, but I'm thinking maybe in the case of these kind of errors, maybe it was some sort of obstruction to the print layer rather than the whole layer being missing. My other thought is that maybe back then when they were using this texture, it wasn't adhering properly to the ink. So we see that there's a lot of texture down here on the bottom edge where they wouldn't actually have to print that color on the edge, or I don't think they would have to print that color because it looks pretty silver like a foil. So maybe that texture had trouble adhering to the ink when it was wet or something like that. I'm not 100% sure why we would see a partial texture like that, and we actually see this quite often on some of these sets. So I'm not sure why that would happen. In a way, I'm happy to see that a texture error is getting so much love, like with the Zoroark card. But in another way, I'm not so happy because obviously the price is pretty inflated on it. So is that going to inflate other texture errors incorrectly in the future? I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to just wait it out and see. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to me yap about texture errors, and tune in next time for some more Pokemon content.